Why spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing from society. The more a person awakens, the less they need the noise of the world. Alan Watts hinted that true transformation often requires stepping back, becoming still, and rediscovering ourselves beyond society's expectations. In today's world, many spiritually awake people are quietly disappearing, not because they are lost, but because they are finally finding themselves. In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore why this silent retreat is happening and how embracing these principles can lead to personal growth, clarity, and deep happiness in your own life. As you listen, ask yourself, have you ever felt the need to step back from the world to reconnect with your inner truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. 1. Awakening leads to withdrawal from the illusion. Spiritually awakened individuals begin to recognize that much of society operates like a stage play, where everyone performs roles they never consciously chose. As their spiritual awakening deepens, they start noticing how people unconsciously follow patterns, repeat beliefs inherited from others, and participate in social expectations that are rarely questioned. Over time, this awareness makes superficial conversations feel draining, societal competitions feel meaningless, and the endless cycle of noise and distraction feel like obstacles rather than necessities. They no longer find comfort in gossip, validation-seeking behaviors, or the constant pressure to fit in, because they now see how these patterns trap people inside an illusion of who they think they should be, rather than who they truly are. Instead of fighting or arguing with the world around them, they quietly step back, withdrawing from environments that pull them away from their truth. This withdrawal is subtle. No announcements, no dramatic exits, no explanations. It is simply the soul choosing peace over performance. They begin favoring authenticity over approval, depth over entertainment, and honesty over social masks. What once felt normal now feels heavy. What once felt exciting now feels empty. And what once felt like connection now feels like noise that disconnects them from their inner clarity. They retreat, not because they dislike people, but because their nervous system craves environments where stillness, sincerity, and presence are possible. As their spirituality becomes a lived reality, they choose solitude more often, understanding that solitude is not loneliness, but a sanctuary where awareness expands. They prefer a few meaningful relationships over many surface-level ones. They spend more time in nature, where there is no judgment, no expectations, no false identities, only truth. And in this quiet transformation, they discover that stepping away from the illusion is not a rejection of life, but a deeper alignment with life. They grow tired of participating in roles that do not match their soul, tired of conversations that avoid truth, tired of living inside structures that reward conformity and suppress awareness, so they simply release themselves from them. People around them may notice their distance and misunderstand it as coldness, withdrawal, or change of personality. But the awakened know the truth. Once you see the illusion, returning to it feels impossible. Once you experience inner peace, external chaos becomes unbearable. Once you encounter your true self, approval from society loses all power. Their disappearance from society is not running away. It is choosing a reality where presence replaces performance, authenticity replaces pretense, and consciousness replaces conditioning. And in that gentle disappearance, spiritually awakened individuals finally feel like they have returned home to themselves. 2. Awakening reveals the collective sleep. Awakening reveals something most people never notice: that waking up is not an idea you understand with your mind, but an experience that shakes your entire perception, pulling you out of the fog long enough to see how many individuals around you are living on autopilot, repeating roles, beliefs, and behaviors that were never truly theirs. As your own spirituality deepens, you begin to sense that society operates like a vast collective dream, where people are encouraged to stay distracted, obedient, and comfortably numb, moving through life with borrowed thoughts and inherited identities. Alan Watts once said, "We seldom realize that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own." And the moment this becomes real to you, something inside shifts permanently. You become aware that what most people call life is often just unconscious repetition, a cycle designed to keep them from looking inward. This clarity makes you step back naturally, not because you no longer care, but because you can finally see through the illusion. You start to notice how deeply conditioned the mind is, how people cling to labels like successful, good, or responsible, without ever asking who defined those standards. And you begin to see how often individuals defend beliefs that limit them simply because they were taught to do so. You see people reacting instead of responding, seeking validation instead of truth, numbing discomfort instead of healing it. As your spiritual development unfolds, noisy environments feel heavier, superficial conversations drain you, and relationships built on fear or obligation become difficult to maintain. You no longer have the desire to participate in chaos because your inner being craves sincerity, simplicity, and emotional clarity. With this heightened awareness, silence becomes a refuge rather than an escape. You find yourself withdrawing from places where authenticity is replaced by performance, and where people are more interested in maintaining an image than understanding themselves. You begin to sense the emotional pollution in modern society, the constant pressure to be productive, to fit in, to accumulate things you do not need, and to pretend you are fine when you are not. And once you see these patterns, you cannot unsee them. You realize that many people fear stillness because stillness exposes their unhealed wounds, so they cling even harder to the distractions that keep them asleep. As your consciousness evolves, you naturally gravitate toward environments where honesty feels safe, where conversations have depth, and where your presence does not need to shrink to make others comfortable. You stop forcing connections. You stop defending truths people are not ready to hear. And you stop tying your identity to external expectations. You are not disappearing from society. You are stepping out of the collective sleep so you can protect your energy, preserve your clarity, and continue growing in a direction that honors your spirit. And even though others may not understand your quiet withdrawal, this path is not about being above anyone. It is about being aligned with yourself, choosing awareness over habit, authenticity over comfort, and truth over illusion. Are you ready to see the world with clearer eyes and deeper spiritual wisdom? If this message resonates with your awakening, comment below. I choose awareness to affirm your commitment to rising above the collective sleep and walking your path with clarity and intention. 3. Participation becomes intolerable. Spiritually awakened individuals slowly realize that the world they once moved through with ease now feels strangely foreign, almost like a stage where everyone is acting out roles they never consciously chose. As their awareness expands, they begin to sense what Alan Watts called the painful gift of seeing too clearly. And this clarity exposes the subtle layers of performance hidden within everyday life. Conversations that once felt normal now seem rehearsed. Routines feel mechanical, and expectations feel like invisible scripts handed out by a society that rarely questions itself. The more awake you become, the harder it is to pretend that these roles still fit you. Because deep inside, you know that the self you used to bring into these spaces does not exist anymore. This inner shift creates a growing tension, because every social interaction starts demanding a version of you that your spirit has already outgrown. You walk into gatherings and feel the weight of small talk that goes nowhere, the emptiness of conversations centered on comparison, success, or drama, and the pressure to participate in emotional patterns you no longer believe in. You begin to notice how often people speak out of habit rather than truth, how often they seek validation instead of connection, and how often they settle for noise instead of depth. Staying in these environments feels less like living and more like shrinking yourself to fit into a life that is becoming too small for the person you are becoming. Careers and roles that once gave you identity soon reveal their hollowness as well. You see how often workplaces reward conformity rather than creativity, compliance over authenticity, and busyness over meaning. You sense that the system values the mask more than the person wearing it. Continuing to participate feels like agreeing to abandon parts of your soul, and every day spent in such structures becomes a quiet reminder that you are performing rather than living. As your spiritual wisdom deepens, the inner conflict becomes impossible to ignore. You are pulled between the comfort of familiarity and the truth of your awakened self, and a voice inside whispers that staying would mean betraying something sacred within you. This is why spiritually awake people begin disappearing, not from life, but from anything that asks them to dim their inner light. They retreat, not because they are weak or antisocial, but because they finally understand the cost of living out of alignment. They withdraw from circles that drain them, conversations that numb them, and environments that demand masks instead of honesty. They choose silence over noise, presence over performance, and truth over belonging to places that no longer resonate. And even though society may interpret their disappearance as detachment, it is actually a powerful return to self. Alan Watts once said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were moments ago." Awakening means honoring the person you are now, not the version the world still expects you to be. 4. Disappearing is a form of integrity, not escapism. Disappearing becomes a form of integrity rather than escapism. When you finally recognize that remaining in environments built on unconscious behavior slowly drains the very essence of your spirituality. And instead of forcing yourself to fit into spaces that no longer honor your growth, you step back to protect the awakening that is unfolding within you. Because every spiritually awakening soul reaches a threshold where the noise of the world becomes too chaotic too shallow, and too disconnected from truth. And at that moment, silence begins to feel like oxygen. This retreat is not spiritual bypassing or avoidance. It is a necessity, a sacred instinct similar to the way a caterpillar retreats into a cocoon, dissolving everything it once was so that something truer can emerge. And just like the caterpillar does not justify its withdrawal to other insects, you too do not owe explanations for choosing solitude, because staying in unconscious environments depletes consciousness, the same way a bright flame dims when surrounded by thick smoke. And your soul knows that to protect the light, you sometimes must step away from the smoke entirely. When you withdraw, you are not rejecting responsibility, but reclaiming responsibility for your inner world. And this shift is profound because it marks the moment you stop abandoning yourself for the comfort of others. You realize that disappearing is not about running away from life, but about running toward a deeper life, one that aligns more honestly with your values, boundaries, and truth. In this hidden season, you begin noticing how much of your old identity was shaped by expectation roles you inherited, beliefs you never questioned, and routines that kept you numb. And as you shed them, a new clarity rises, showing you where you were shrinking yourself just to be accepted. That clarity is uncomfortable, yet it is also liberating, because it exposes the quiet ways in which the world teaches people to betray themselves for belonging. And your retreat becomes the first step in breaking that cycle. As your spiritual awakening deepens, the urge to disappear is actually the soul's way of protecting its transformation. You feel less drawn to noise, gossip, and shallow distractions because your inner world is becoming louder, richer, and more alive. And that richness requires space. You choose solitude not because you dislike people, but because you finally like yourself enough to stop placing your energy where it is drained. Relationships built on convenience fade, and relationships built on authenticity grow stronger. Because now you see more clearly who truly meets you at the level of depth your spirit requires. In the quiet, your mind resets, your nervous system softens, and your intuition strengthens. You begin to understand that disappearing allows the deeper parts of you to reorganize themselves, to let go of old wounds, to heal without interruption, and to prepare for the next chapter of your evolution. And though some may misinterpret your silence as distance or coldness, they cannot see the inner restructuring taking place, the dissolving of old identities, the expansion of your consciousness, and the emergence of a more aligned self. Eventually, the solitude that once felt like retreat transforms into empowerment, and you return to life not as the drained version of yourself who tolerated anything for peace, but as someone grounded, clear, and guided by inner truth. In this way, disappearing becomes a sacred act of self-preservation, a necessary cocooning that protects your authenticity and strengthens your spirituality, allowing you to step back into the world with a quieter confidence, a clearer purpose, and a deeper connection to who you were always meant to be. If this message resonates with your soul, leave a comment below. I honor my spiritual integrity, even when it sets me apart. 5. Solitude is healing, not loneliness. Solitude becomes a powerful form of healing the moment you step into the path of spirituality, because in that quiet space, you are no longer running from yourself, but finally returning to yourself. And this is why Spiritually awake people no longer confuse loneliness with aloneness. Loneliness feels heavy because it comes from the pain of being unseen, unheard, or misunderstood by others. But aloneness carries a sense of freedom, a soft inner breath, the realization that you are finally allowed to exist without performing for the world. When you begin embracing this inner space, you start meeting parts of yourself you had ignored for years, the silent intuitions, the hidden emotions, the forgotten dreams. And as you face them with honesty, you begin the deep spiritual development that only solitude can awaken. You realize how many of your old identities were shaped by fear, expectation, and the need for approval. And as the noise fades, those layers fall away one by one, revealing the truest version of you beneath them. In this gentle stillness, your mind becomes clearer, your heart becomes softer, and you start understanding yourself with a compassion you never knew you were capable of giving. The more time you spend alone, the more your inner world opens. You begin to see the patterns behind your reactions, the stories behind your wounds, and the strength behind your survival. You start asking yourself questions you never had space for before. Who am I without external validation? What do I truly want? What beliefs have been shaping my life without my awareness? And in the silence, your answers rise naturally, guiding you toward a deeper alignment with your soul. As solitude becomes your sanctuary, you stop fearing your own company and start craving it, because it becomes the place where your spirit grows strongest. You learn to listen to your emotions without judgment, to sit with discomfort without running, and to create inner peace without relying on anyone else to provide it. Slowly, this inner connection transforms the way you move through the world. You no longer feel pressured to explain yourself, prove yourself, or shrink yourself for those who cannot understand your awakening. Instead, you begin detaching from energies that drain you and gravitating toward what nurtures your growth. Solitude teaches you how to choose yourself without guilt, how to trust your intuition without hesitation, and how to rebuild your life on a foundation that reflects your deeper truth. Over time, this relationship with yourself becomes unshakable, and you begin to realize that losing people is not the real fear of losing the connection to your own soul is. With every quiet moment you embrace, you strengthen your inner compass, and the world's noise becomes less controlling and less relevant. In solitude, you rediscover the sacred power that comes from being fully present with yourself. And through this presence, you heal what once felt impossible to heal. You understand what once felt confusing, and you step into a version of yourself that feels more authentic, more grounded, and more free than ever before. 6. The inner work is demanding but transformative. You begin to understand, in a way that feels both heavy and liberating, that the inner work of spiritual awakening is not glamorous but necessary, not loud but life-changing. And Alan Watts often reminded us that the only way out is through, meaning you can no longer avoid the parts of yourself you once tried to bury. When you awaken, you face your own shadows with honesty instead of denial. You sit with your fears instead of distracting yourself, and you acknowledge your emotional wounds instead of blaming others for them. Because deep down, you realize that this is the only path toward becoming whole. And as you walk this path, you see that every fear you confront becomes a doorway to strength. Every painful memory becomes an opportunity for clarity, and every uncomfortable truth becomes a foundation for authenticity, shaping you into someone who no longer performs for the world, but lives from the core of your being. You start to understand what Carl Jung meant when he said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens," because looking inside forces you to confront the messiness, the contradictions, the insecurities, and the emotional patterns that secretly govern your life. And in doing so, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop projecting your unresolved pain onto others, and instead take responsibility for your reactions, knowing that emotional maturity comes from seeing yourself clearly rather than defending your illusions. This is where spiritual wisdom becomes real. You feel it when you choose introspection over distraction, when you decide to sit with your discomfort instead of numbing it, and when you stop outsourcing your happiness to external circumstances. As your inner world becomes quieter and more grounded, your emotional resilience grows in ways you never expected. You are not as easily shaken by criticism. You do not collapse under stress the way you used to, and you no longer allow the energy of chaotic people to dictate your peace. You find strength in silence, not because you are withdrawing, but because silence becomes the place where you can hear your soul again. And naturally, this shift pulls you away from environments filled with noise, superficiality, and emotional avoidance, making you less available for drama, negativity, and relationships that thrive on conflict rather than growth. This is why spiritually awake people seem to disappear from society. They are not hiding. They are choosing. They choose depth over distraction, solitude over noise, and truth over validation. They are drawn toward people who value honesty, toward conversations that nourish the mind, and toward lifestyles that align with their new sense of clarity. They move differently because they feel differently, and they feel differently because they have done the work within themselves that others avoid. Awakening changes your values so profoundly that the old version of you simply no longer fits the world you once lived in. And as you step into this new alignment, you embody a calm strength, an inner certainty, and a quiet authenticity that cannot be shaken. If this message about inner transformation speaks to you, leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss new insights. Comment below. I choose the inner work to affirm your commitment to your spiritual awakening. 7. Return is possible, but different. There comes a stage in the journey of spiritual awakening when the inner transformation becomes so complete that returning to society is not a backward step, but an entirely new way of existing. Because once the deep inner work has burned away illusion and unconsciousness, you can no longer move through the world the way you once did. Those who awaken do not return to rejoin the noise or participate in the collective sleep. Instead, they come back carrying a quieter, deeper intelligence, moving with an authenticity that stands in gentle contrast to the chaos around them. As Alan Watts often reminded us, you are an aperture through which the universe is looking at itself. And awakened souls embody this truth so naturally that their very presence becomes a form of guidance long before they ever speak a word. They do not try to preach, persuade, or convert, because they understand that real change does not come from argument. It comes from example. Having crossed the thresholds of their own consciousness, and seen the inner roots of suffering, they re-enter the world as what many call border dwellers, standing not fully inside society's illusions, yet not fully outside the human experience either. They walk with one foot in the world of form and the other in the realm of awareness, allowing them to participate without being absorbed, to observe without disconnecting, and to influence without imposing. They return as artists, healers, writers, and quiet leaders, shaping reality not through force, but through the subtle power of authenticity. Their actions become expressions of the inner work they have done, and their lives transform into living metaphors, clear mirrors through which others can see themselves more truthfully. Even their silence becomes meaningful. They no longer need to justify their choices or explain their path, because their energy speaks for them. Like a lantern placed in a dark room, their presence naturally illuminates, allowing others to see without being told where to look. This is why awakened individuals often inspire transformation in those around them without deliberate effort. The shift in their consciousness creates a ripple effect that touches others in ways they may not fully understand. Their spirituality is lived rather than performed, embodied rather than announced. And because they understand the delicate nature of awakening, they choose to guide through presence, creativity, and integrity rather than through noise or authority. Returning to society is therefore not a regression, but an evolution. It is a re-engagement that comes from clarity, not obligation, from understanding, not fear. They know they can step back into the world without losing themselves, because they carry an inner stillness that is stronger than any external influence. The world they left may be the same, but they are not. And because of that, everything feels different. Conversations, habits, relationships, even silence holds a new meaning. They move slowly, intentionally, as if aware that every moment carries the potential to awaken something in someone else. Through this, they become quiet reminders that a different way of living is possible, and without preaching, without demanding, without trying to be anything other than themselves, they inspire others to consider their own path toward awareness, proving that the deepest form of teaching is simply the way one chooses to exist. 8. The world needs genuine awakening, not performance. Spiritually awake people are not abandoning the world. They are simply stepping out of the noise to protect their truth. Because in a society obsessed with display and surface-level enlightenment, depth has become an act of quiet rebellion. When you hear the words, "The world needs genuine awakening, not performance," you can feel how accurate they are, because you too have seen how spirituality is often turned into a show, how spiritual development is treated like a trend rather than a transformation. Those who are truly awakening are not interested in putting on a performance. They are interested in becoming real, and so they disappear, not to escape life, but to come back to it with clarity. Their withdrawal is a conscious choice to detach from the pressure to appear wise, strong, or unbothered, and instead do the internal work that no one can see and no one will applaud. They move away from spaces filled with judgment, noise, and comparison, because they know that true growth cannot happen in environments that reward everything except sincerity. If you have ever felt tired of being the one who understands, the one who listens, the one who offers compassion while receiving none in return, then you already understand why spiritually awake people step into solitude. They are not running away from the world. They are running toward their own center. They sense that the collective consciousness is shifting, that something deep beneath the surface is preparing to break open. And they know they must strengthen themselves before they can guide anyone else. They choose quiet mornings over crowded rooms, genuine connection over empty validation, inner alignment over outer approval, because they understand that you cannot anchor new awareness while drowning in the old one. And so, like roots growing underground, their work is invisible but essential. Their disappearance is necessary because every era of awakening begins in silence. They retreat so they can refine their perception, heal their emotional wounds, and deepen their connection to what is real, freeing themselves from the unconscious patterns that society forces upon everyone. They leave behind shallow conversations, draining relationships, and environments that require them to shrink, because they know that staying would be a betrayal of their soul. Instead, they follow the pull toward stillness, where truth speaks louder, where intuition becomes clearer, and where they can finally hear the wisdom that is drowned out in everyday life. Yet the most important part is this: they will return. When the world becomes tired of its own noise, when people begin to search for something real, these quietly awakened individuals will be the ones who know how to lead, not through speeches or status, but through presence. They will be the calm in the chaos, the clarity when confusion rises, the grounding energy when others feel lost. Their strength will not come from performing enlightenment, but from living it, and their influence will come not from being seen, but from embodying a level of peace and awareness that others can feel. From this understanding, there are lessons meant for you. Honor your need for silence, even when the world pushes you toward noise. Stop judging your value by how much you do, and start recognizing it in how deeply you live. Remember that spirituality is not how you look, but how you think, choose, and respond when no one is watching. And trust that every season of withdrawal is part of your preparation. You are not disappearing. You are evolving, and one day the world will understand why your absence was necessary for your awakening. To honor this reminder that the world needs authentic awakening, not spiritual performance, take a moment to ground your intention. Comment below, "I choose genuine awakening," to affirm your commitment to walking this path with sincerity and to inspire others to do the same. In the end, the quiet disappearance of spiritually awake people is not a retreat from life, but a return to truth, a reminder that growth often happens away from noise, in spaces where the soul can finally breathe. If today's message resonated with you, let it guide your own journey toward deeper awareness and inner peace. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming insights. Life is a psychological game. Carl Jung's secret to winning it. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a game to be played. Carl Jung once suggested that our greatest suffering comes from taking life too seriously, forgetting that we are both the player and the piece on the board. In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll explore how understanding the psychological rules of this game can transform your challenges into opportunities for mastery, joy, and growth. What if winning in life isn't about control, but about awareness, adaptability, and inner balance? Comment below with your thoughts. How do you play the game of life? And if this message resonates, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next step on your journey of spiritual awakening. 1. Life is a game, not a test. Carl Jung once revealed that life is not a solemn examination, but a psychological and spiritual game. And in this game, the only way to truly win is to stop trying so hard to win. We are not placed on earth to be perfect, to earn a grade, or to meet society's impossible expectations. We are here to play, to explore, to grow in consciousness. When you stop treating life as a serious test and begin to see it as an ever-evolving game of the soul, you release the heavy burden of control and open yourself to the lightness of being. Suddenly, existence becomes less about survival and more about participation, less about the outcome and more about the experience itself. This shift from fear to play, from tension to trust, is the first real step of spirituality, the beginning of spiritual awakening. When we play a game, we don't obsess over every move. We engage fully, we take risks, and we learn as we go. Jung's insight shows that life functions in the same way. Every encounter, every loss, every victory is simply another move in the grand design of consciousness. The problem is that most people forget they are players, and they mistake the game for the test. They become trapped in anxiety, perfectionism, and self-judgment, always fearing they might fail. But in truth, failure does not exist in this game. Only feedback does. Each challenge appears not to punish, but to teach. The soul uses experience as its language, translating our pain, joy, and confusion into deeper awareness. Once you see this, you begin to move differently through life, calmer, lighter, more awake. Children understand this naturally. They play with total immersion, but never forget it as play. They are completely in the moment, creative, curious, and alive. As adults, we lose that sacred innocence because we've been conditioned to measure, to compare, to prove. But spiritual awakening is about returning to that childlike wisdom where you live, create, and love without constantly asking whether you are enough. When you embrace life as a game, the seriousness dissolves, the pressure fades, and you reconnect with your inner freedom. You begin to act not from fear of failure, but from the joy of expression. You start to realize that consciousness itself is playing through you, that you are both the player and the playground. Jung's teachings remind us that the true battlefield is the mind. And once you master your inner state, the outer world becomes a reflection of that mastery. Life begins to mirror your inner balance. When you move with presence, people respond differently. When you let go of control, things start to flow. When you stop chasing validation, peace finds you. The real victory is not in outsmarting the world, but in understanding yourself. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is the moment you stop playing unconsciously and begin to play with awareness. It is where spirituality becomes practical, where awakening meets reality. Every emotion you feel, every reaction you give, is a move in this psychological game. You can choose to respond from fear or from wisdom, from ego or from awareness. The more you learn the rules of your own psyche, the more elegantly you play. And those rules are simple. Pay attention to your thoughts, observe your emotions, and remember that nothing happening to you is personal. It is all an invitation to evolve. When you treat life as a spiritual practice rather than a punishment, your energy changes. The heaviness turns to curiosity, the confusion to clarity, the chaos to flow. You begin to see that the goal of this game is not to win against others, but to remember who you are. And in that remembrance, you discover the deepest truth of all that life was never testing you. It was teaching you how to awaken. If today's message resonated with you, take your first step toward mastering the psychological game of life. Comment below, "I play with awareness," to affirm that you're ready to move through life not as a test, but as a conscious, evolving game of growth and wisdom. 2. You're playing a role, but you are not the role. Like actors who lose themselves in the roles they play, we too often forget that life itself is a grand performance and that we are merely wearing temporary masks. You may call yourself a teacher, a lover, a parent, or even a failure. But these are only costumes your soul wears for a while. Carl Jung, through his profound spiritual wisdom, revealed that the ego is just a mask, an identity created to help us interact with the world, but it is not who we truly are. Beneath the layers of expectation, reputation, and memory lies something eternal, the awareness observing it all. You are not the actor on the stage. You are the consciousness watching the play unfold. Once you remember this, you begin to live differently. Life no longer feels like a punishment or a race, but a divine opportunity for spiritual development, a classroom for the soul to awaken through experience. When you identify too strongly with the role you play, you suffer the way an actor would if they forgot the performance was temporary. You start mistaking the pain of the scene for your own pain, the script for your destiny. Jung called this danger over-identification with the persona, the illusion that your public mask is your true self. The moment you realize this deception, the world around you changes. You see that your job title, your relationship status, your failures, or your achievements cannot define your essence. They are chapters, not the book. They are waves on the surface of a vast ocean, but you are the ocean itself still, deep, unshakable. This realization is the birth of spiritual maturity, the very essence of spiritual development. It's when you stop clinging to what comes and goes and begin resting in what has always been your inner awareness. When you live from this awareness, you begin to play your roles beautifully but lightly. You can be ambitious without being consumed by ambition, loving without losing yourself in attachment, successful without fearing loss. You realize that every role, whether of triumph or trial, was designed to teach your soul something about itself. Even your failures become sacred, for they push you to remember who you truly are beyond appearances. You start observing your emotions instead of drowning in them, and that simple awareness transforms everything. The same world remains around you, but your experience of it becomes richer, softer, more meaningful. So, as you move through the stages of your life, wear your masks when needed, but don't forget to take them off in silence and return to the stillness of your true being. You are not what the world calls you. You are the one who hears the call. And when you awaken to that truth, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a dance, a game of divine consciousness where every moment, whether sweet or bitter, becomes a step toward greater spiritual wisdom and deeper spiritual development. Comment below, "I am not my role." I am my soul. If you're ready to rise above the masks of life and step into your true self. 3. The game has no final destination. There is no ultimate victory waiting for you at the end of this journey, because in truth, life itself was never designed as a race. The game has no final destination, no crown of completion. It is not something to be conquered, but something to be experienced moment by moment, breath by breath. Just like music or dance, its beauty lies not in the ending, but in the movement. You don't listen to a song just to reach the last note. You listen because every sound, every pause, every rhythm awakens something within you. You don't dance to arrive at a particular spot. You dance because the motion itself makes you feel alive. Yet somewhere along the way, we forgot that. We began to treat life like a linear climb, believing happiness waits only at the top, after success, after perfection. We became obsessed with outcomes, goals, and results, and in doing so, we missed the only place where life actually unfolds, the now. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that the real task is not to reach the end, but to awaken within the process. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. These words carry the essence of the psychological game. We are all playing a game, not of outer competition, but of inner awareness. We often think we are chasing achievements, but what we are truly seeking is a sense of meaning. The more we pursue external validation, the more we drift away from our authentic self. The mind, always hungry for progress, convinces us that peace and purpose lie somewhere ahead after we earn enough, achieve enough, or become enough. But Jung would say the opposite, that peace begins the moment you stop running and start observing. The game doesn't need to be won. It needs to be understood. In this invisible game, the people who suffer most are the ones who forget that play is sacred. They take life too seriously, mistaking temporary losses for total defeat. Every failure, every delay, every heartbreak is not punishment, but instruction. Jung believed that the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole, is paved with both light and shadow. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he wrote, meaning that each challenge you face reveals a hidden layer of yourself. What you resist becomes your teacher. What you fear becomes your guide, and what you accept becomes your strength. To truly win at this psychological game is to remember that you are not here to arrive. You are here to evolve. You win when you stop measuring yourself against others and begin mastering your own energy, your own awareness, your own rhythm. You win when you realize that every moment, even the uncertain ones, is a chance to play with presence, to choose curiosity over control, and to move with life instead of against it. The deeper your awareness grows, the more skillfully you play, not because you are chasing victory, but because you are awake within the game. As Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom teaches, the secret was never about reaching the end. It was about remembering who you are while playing conscious, alive, and free. Do you understand that life isn't about arriving somewhere, but about awakening through every step you take? If you do, affirm it in the comments below. I embrace the journey, not the destination. 4. You are the game itself, not just a player. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And in that single sentence lies the key to understanding that life is not something you play, it is something you are. You are not merely a piece moving on the board of existence. You are the board, the game, and the consciousness observing every move. In the depth of Jungian psychology, your mind is not contained within the world. The world is contained within your mind. Everything you encounter, from the people who bless you to those who test you, is a reflection of your own psyche projected outward. What you call reality is the mirror of your own spiritual awakening, showing you where you are free and where you are still bound. Every challenge is not life attacking you. It is life teaching you, revealing the parts of your soul that are ready to evolve into awareness. Once you awaken to this truth, you begin to see that nothing in your life is random. The friend who disappoints you, the lover who leaves you, the setback that shatters your plans, all of them are pieces of a divine design calling you inward. When you stop blaming the outside world, you begin to play the psychological game with consciousness. You move from victim to creator, from reaction to response. Jung believed that every encounter in your external world represents an inner dialogue between your conscious and unconscious mind. To master this game is to stop chasing happiness outside and start understanding the hidden messages life sends through every experience. The real opponent is not the world, it is your unawareness. Think back to your childhood when play felt effortless and alive. You could pretend to be a warrior, a queen, or an explorer, fully immersed, yet never forgetting it was play. That is how an awakened soul lives, participating completely, yet never imprisoned by the illusion. You can laugh, love, fail, and rise again, all while knowing that you are both the actor and the audience. The game of life was never about winning. It was about remembering that the player and the stage are one. True spirituality is not escape. It is engagement with awareness. The more you awaken, the less you judge, because you see that every person you meet is acting out a hidden part of your own consciousness, giving you a chance to integrate and grow. In this understanding, spirituality becomes the art of mastery rather than struggle. When you realize you are the game, life no longer feels like a punishment or test, but an unfolding of your inner world into form. You stop fighting what is happening and begin to cooperate with the deeper intelligence that orchestrates everything. Challenges lose their sting because you know they are only lessons in disguise, guiding you toward greater wholeness. You begin to live with grace, aware, centered, and unshaken. You start to love the process because you finally see that every move, every encounter, and every ending is your own consciousness expanding through experience. In the end, spirituality is not about escaping the illusion of life, but playing it consciously, knowing that you were never just the player, for you were the game all along. 5. Suffering comes from resistance, not pain. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. It's what happens when you resist life instead of flowing with it. When you say, "This shouldn't be happening," you create tension between what is real and what you wish were real, and that resistance becomes the true source of suffering. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He knew that life is a psychological game, and those who understand the rules realize that peace doesn't come from control, but from acceptance. The wise player learns to observe every emotional storm without judgment, just as the sky accepts both sunshine and rain without complaint. You are that sky, vast, unshaken, and eternal. while every emotion, every hardship, and every joy is simply passing weather. The moment you stop identifying with the rain and start realizing you are the open sky that holds it, something changes inside you. Pain no longer feels like punishment. It becomes purification. It's not meant to destroy you, but to deepen you, to guide you into higher states of awareness and spiritual development. Every time you resist reality, you strengthen the ego's illusion of control. But when you surrender, you awaken the soul. Pain becomes your teacher, not your enemy. It shows you where you still cling, where you still fear, where you still hold back from life. The ego wants to escape discomfort, but the spirit knows that growth is born from it. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." When you embrace pain with awareness instead of fear, you begin to transform it into wisdom. You start to see that the moments that once broke you were actually shaping you. In the grand game of life, each challenge is a level that tests your emotional maturity. Each heartbreak an initiation into deeper truth. To resist is to suffer. To accept is to evolve. The most powerful souls are not those who never feel pain, but those who no longer let pain define them. They move through storms without losing their center, because they know the rain will pass and the sun will rise again. Suffering fades when you stop clinging to what was or fearing what might be, and simply allow life to unfold. You begin to live in harmony with the present moment instead of fighting against it. The energy you once wasted resisting becomes fuel for your awakening. Acceptance is not giving up. It's choosing to meet reality with grace and consciousness. It's realizing that life is not here to hurt you, but to awaken you. Pain will visit, but suffering only stays if you invite it in. The more you surrender, the freer you become. Because surrender is not weakness, it's alignment with truth. When you can look at pain and say, "I see you, I accept you, and I will learn from you," you begin to master the psychological game of life. That is where true spirituality begins, not in escaping emotion, but in fully feeling it without becoming it, turning every experience, even the painful ones, into a doorway to spiritual development and inner freedom. If this message has touched your heart, remember peace begins the moment you stop resisting what is. Embrace the flow of life and let go of the struggle. If you're ready to release resistance and rise above suffering, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and share your reflections in the comments. Let's grow together in awareness and strength. 6. You're free to reinvent yourself. Consistency is overrated. You are free to reinvent yourself at any moment, because who you were 5 minutes ago does not have to dictate who you are now. Real freedom, as Carl Jung revealed through his profound understanding of the human psyche, lies not in holding tightly to one identity, but in the to move fluidly through life while staying rooted in your authentic self. This is what true spiritual wisdom teaches, that transformation is not a betrayal of who you are, but an evolution of your truth. Children understand this effortlessly. One moment they are explorers, the next they are creators, freely shifting roles without overthinking, fully alive in the moment. But as we grow older, we begin to trap ourselves inside rigid identities, pretending that consistency equals strength. We start to mistake predictability for stability, even though our souls crave expansion, not repetition. Consistency becomes a prison when it stops you from becoming who you are meant to be. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that journey requires the courage to evolve beyond who you were yesterday. When you cling to an outdated version of yourself, you're not protecting your identity. You're restricting your growth. Life is not asking you to be the same. It's asking you to be real. Your beliefs, values, and dreams are meant to shift as you awaken to deeper layers of truth. Spiritual awakening is realizing that your identity is not a mask to maintain, but a mirror constantly reflecting new light. What you thought was inconsistency is actually transformation. Your inner self reshaping itself in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. To resist change is to resist life itself, because every ending is an opening. Every letting go is a return to authenticity. The most spiritually awakened souls understand that reinvention is not instability, but a sacred expression of trust in your own unfolding, in divine timing, in the intelligence that orchestrates your evolution. Stop fearing the loss of who you were. You are not losing yourself. You are shedding what was too small for your soul to keep wearing. When you release the need to appear consistent, you stop living for validation and start living for liberation. The old version of you served a purpose, but you're not meant to repeat the same chapter forever. Life, as Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us, is a psychological game where the only way to win is to stay aware, adaptable, and aligned. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. The moment you dare to look within and allow the old self to dissolve, you awaken to infinite possibility. Every breath is a reset. Every choice is a chance to begin again. Every shift in identity is not chaos. It's the soul's natural rhythm of rebirth. To reinvent yourself is not to abandon your past, but to honor the endless power of becoming. 7. There are no real mistakes, only experiences. Every stumble in life is not a failure, but a message, a sacred whisper from the universe guiding your next move. In this psychological game of existence, every experience, no matter how uncomfortable, is a step towards spiritual awakening. Carl Jung, the master of depth psychology, revealed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And through this lens, what we often label as mistakes are actually invitations to grow. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall countless times, yet they never stop trying. Their focus is not on falling, but on learning, on discovering balance through movement. This same principle applies to you. In spirituality, growth does not happen through perfection, but through participation, through daring to try, to fail, and to rise again with greater awareness. Each misstep becomes feedback from life, showing where your alignment, focus, or energy needs refinement. As you move along your path, judgment is your only real obstacle. The moment you start condemning yourself for your past or comparing your journey to others, you paralyze your evolution. The universe is not punishing you. It is preparing you. Every delay, rejection, or redirection is your soul's way of sculpting you into someone capable of holding higher wisdom. Spirituality teaches that every experience, pleasant or painful, carries meaning, and every emotion holds a key to deeper understanding. You are not meant to control life like a chessboard. You are meant to play it consciously, to learn its patterns, and to respond with grace. The true masters of this psychological game do not chase certainty. They cultivate awareness. They learn to listen to what each experience is saying without labeling it as good or bad, success or failure. Carl Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are beneath the masks of conditioning. This journey requires curiosity, humility, and courage. When you fall, it's not proof that you're broken. It's proof that you're alive, learning, and expanding your consciousness. Spiritual awakening begins when you realize that nothing is wasted, that every struggle refines your inner strength. Like the player who studies every move to master the game, the awakened soul studies every experience to master themselves. Pain becomes wisdom, confusion becomes clarity, and fear becomes faith. The illusion of failure dissolves when you understand that every situation is a mirror reflecting what your soul still needs to integrate. The universe never takes it, only transforms. So instead of fearing your missteps, start honoring them. They are not interruptions in your path. They are your path. Life will keep presenting you with lessons until you no longer see them as punishments, but as divine rehearsals for your evolution. Each fall is feedback. Each disappointment, a hidden door to self-knowledge. Once you stop fearing imperfection, you enter a new dimension of freedom, where every experience, whether joyful or painful, becomes part of your awakening. That is the spiritual wisdom Carl Jung hinted at. You win the psychological game of life, not by avoiding mistakes, but by learning to see them as sacred teachers in disguise, leading you home to yourself. If this message touched your soul today, let it be your reminder that every so-called mistake was guiding you toward wisdom. Comment below. Every experience shapes my awakening, to affirm your trust in growth and the unfolding journey of life. 8. The rules. Change as you play, and everyone can win. Life isn't a rigid structure where the rules stay the same. It's a living, breathing psychological game that evolves as you do. Every decision you make, every thought you hold, every feeling you nurture quietly shapes the direction of your reality. Carl Jung once said that the world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you, reminding us that our inner world defines the outer game. When you move through life burdened by fear, doubt, or resentment, reality seems to mirror those emotions right back to you. But when you begin to embody peace, curiosity, and love, the universe responds like a reflection in clear water, offering harmony, synchronicity, and flow. This is the hidden truth behind both psychology and spirituality. Your perception doesn't just interpret life, it creates it. The more you grow in your spiritual development, the more the rules change, because you begin to realize you were never just a player. You were the game itself all along. What once looked like rejection now feels like redirection. What once felt like chaos transforms into divine order. And what once seemed like loss becomes a gateway to freedom. Every hardship becomes a teacher. Every conflict becomes a mirror. And every ending reveals a higher beginning. You start to see that no one truly loses, because there was never any other to compete with, only fragments of yourself meeting through experience. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that is the moment you awaken, the instant you realize that awareness itself changes everything. Once you stop fighting the flow and begin observing your own patterns, life ceases to feel like punishment and starts to feel like participation. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start understanding, this is happening for me. The world doesn't demand that you dominate it. It asks that you understand it, harmonize with it, and play consciously. As your awareness expands, you begin to see how every act of kindness, every spark of compassion, every breath of forgiveness transforms the collective field we all share. When you rise, others rise too, because in the end, everyone is you in another form. The secret is that the game of life was never meant to be won by defeating others, but by remembering your unity with them. True mastery is not control, it's alignment. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that the universe is not against you, it's responding to you. When you learn to move through life with this understanding, every challenge becomes an invitation to evolve, and every victory becomes a shared awakening. And that's when you finally realize the only real way to win this game is through love, awareness, and the courage to keep playing with your whole heart. Life, as Carl Jung revealed, is not a cruel test, but a profound psychological game, one that rewards awareness, self-understanding, and inner balance. The moment you stop reacting and start observing, you begin to master the game instead of being played by it. Remember, every challenge is simply another move, inviting you to grow in wisdom and consciousness. So keep playing with presence, courage, and grace. If this message has inspired you today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on awakening, transformation, and the deeper truths of the soul.